Hi, my name is Nicholas Clausen, and alongside me are Kiara Kareem and Wai Chung Lam. And today we are all excited to share our way of improving Purelator's API integration experience. So, beginning with a quick agenda for the day, I will first talk about the objectives of the actual project. I'll give a background of the API, of what an API is, and also our engagement approach to the project. Wai Chung will then go over the research findings that we had, specifically the interview, market analysis, and the portal, Pure Leaders portal analysis. And then Kiara will finish off with the recommendations, risks, and mitigations, as well as our implementation plan for our recommendations. So, beginning with the objectives, there's been a market trend in which the API solutions have been the fastest growing shipping channel, specifically for that of Purelator's career line of business. And this is important because Purelator now must look for a way to transform their API integration experience so that it best suits potential users and also acts as a point of differentiation amongst their competitors. So, our role in this is to gather research for both how users and the market uses this API, their API portals. Like, what are the points of pain for the users, and what are the best practices used by competitors? From there, we will be able to analyze that and develop a roadmap on how our client can improve on its API solutions. So, what actually is an API? An API is an application programming interface, and it describes the mechanisms that allow an application to access data or functionality provided by another application system or service. So, one way of thinking about this is if you ask Siri what the weather is, it'll actually send out a quick response and send a quick response back, accessing the pool of data where it has the weather. And that is a very, very simple way of how an API actually works. So our engagement approach had three different aspects to it. The first aspect was that me, Wai Chung, and Kira did not really have much experience with APIs. We've never really worked with APIs. So we took it upon ourselves to to do research about what an API is and watch videos to learn more about them. So we understand their importance as well as the difference between REST and SOAP APIs. Secondly, we did interviews with web developers. We took a qualitative approach to user market research because we thought it would be the best way to understanding their practices as well as their emotional response to using different API portals. It was important to understand how they actually feel about it so that we could see what matters most to the users. And thirdly, we posed as web developers. We did this so that we could create accounts and actually go through the process of using the portal to see where we found it was easiest and hardest to actually work through the process. And if there were tutorials that helped us along the way, that was great. That was all part of the process.
So, from the interview, we found several key insights. The first one is the persona of a developer. We did notice that developers tend to be more on the introverted side and also prefer routine because their work is actually very inconsistent because they take on engagements of varying quality all the time. So they like to keep to a routine despite all these differences in their projects. They also really hate phone calls due to a dislike of talking, as noted by the introverted side of their persona. And they said that when doing API projects, they really enjoy having good documentation. And in addition to documentation, they also really enjoy video tutorials and forums as their preferred methods of problem solving. And they also mention consistently that Stack Overflow is a primary resource if they encounter issues, as they would go to that website for any sort of shooting issues.
So, taking on the role as developers, our team analyzed 13 different company portals and curated a list of some key findings and best practices. The first thing being that the registration and resources were accessible and efficient, meaning that the registration process was short and not redundant or extraneous, and that the resources were able to be retrieved relatively quickly. Another important thing was detailed and comprehensible documentation. This means that it was thorough enough to be useful, but not overwhelming in length that it was difficult to find what was needed in a timely manner. The visual component of portals was also very important. Strong aesthetics and visual segmentation contributed to a layout and navigation that was a lot more intuitive. And in terms of support functions, majority of the companies offered at minimum two support functions, with at least one being self-serving, and all of the portals offered REST APIs. We also analyzed Purelator's developer portal and measured it against the key findings from all of our research. The strengths that we noted was that the company has thorough documentation and multiple support options available. Some of the weaknesses was that the processes such as onboarding and registration, as well as reading the documentation, these were found to be time-consuming and tedious. Additionally, though the company has multiple support options, they often lacked self-serving capabilities and were not helpful in a timely manner. We think that the company could additionally create a visually interactive and engaging portal to help improve the intuitiveness of it. And currently, the company only offers SOAP APIs. So in our recommendations, we hope to address these weaknesses and these user pain points. Our recommendation is divided into 3 sections: API integration, technical improvements, and support capabilities. For the API integration, our first recommendation is simplifying the registration process. So removing having to fill out the same information multiple times in different processes. We also think that a website redesign would be beneficial. So having stronger visuals with the use of typefaces, colors, and graphics, this will help emulate the brand better, but also help illustrate step-by-step procedures and segment information in a way that's more digestible for the user and just enhances the user experience overall. Those same things can be applied to documentation, as well as making sure that the documentation is as succinct as possible. And we also think that including an advanced search function would be beneficial for user convenience. In terms of technical improvements, our first recommendation is to offer REST APIs. Contingent on the capabilities of the company, potentially offering both SOAP and REST is beneficial, though if having to choose one, we suggest REST APIs. We also recommend incorporating a monitoring system for API usage. More information on REST versus SOAP, as well as specific performance tracking criterion, is included in the report. Lastly, for support capabilities, we think that there should be a deep prioritization of the phone lines and support forms as the primary support functions, and instead an implementation of a chat box, which will allow the user to receive one-on-one support, but in a more timely fashion. We think improvements can be made to the developer forum as well, such as adding threads that are linked to commonly used developer resources such as Stack Overflow. And lastly, we think that creating video tutorials for the users will be beneficial as well.
So for our implementation timeline, this is what we propose. First off, in the short term, we propose completing the switch over to focusing on REST instead of SOAP, and at the same time develop support resources, plan the website redesign, redo the documentation on the site, and create a training module for staff. Then in the medium term, we propose launching the new site and analyzing the competition further to see what new industry trends there are in other developer portals, and then finally advertise to developers more. Then long-term wise, which is by the end of this year, we propose that they focus on maintaining website functionality and also at the same time increasing accessibility via mobile experience enhancement. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. Thank you for listening, and we will now open up for any questions